Quantum Talks 8.0 Professional Counseling, Coaching, and Wellness. We will help you to sort out the details so that you can get to where you are trying to go. Call us today.
Greetings. Thank you so much for tuning in to Rap Sessions with Dr. Kiki. I am your host, Dr. Kiki, and it's, as always, a pleasure to chat with you. Um, Tonight, I want to just press upon the importance of exercising self-control. We live in a society where everyone wants what they want now, and it doesn't matter what other people think or um, by any means necessary. So it is imperative that we exercise self-control and self-restraint prior to actions, prior to thoughts, prior to intentions, and what are we doing? What are we saying? When we exercise self-control, you are exercising a part of yourself that normally in hindsight you're going to thank yourself for. If you're at a red light and the light turns green and the person in front of you is just sitting there, it is convenient and it feels like, oh, come on, move it. We're blowing our horn and bonk, bonk, get out of the way. But really and truly, being able to exercise composure of oneself and to some people call it taking a moment, breathing in, breathing out, whatever you want to call it, but exercising that restraint and composure actually assists us to live a healthier life. So what do I mean by self-control? I mean being able to override an impulse that might seem convenient, might seem warranted, but really and truly isn't just wasted energy. In exercising self-control, I am taking back my power. I am not looking for someone else to blame. It's easy for me to own my own part in what happened because I'm looking at my own responsibility toward the situation. In most people's arena, business or personal, it's more convenient to say, well, they didn't do this, they didn't provide this, and they, so that made me da da da. But when we actually look at ourselves, and it's called introspective views, if we're taking an introspective view of ourselves, our actions, our inactions, we should be able to see what part we played in the scenario. But most times that forces humans to seek or see a part of themselves that they don't want to see, um, parts of situations they're not ready to deal with. And it's easier to cause more friction by blaming someone else. But when I exercise self-control, I am thinking prior to an action to determine what are the side effects, what are the ramifications, what are the attributes of what it is I could choose or not choose to do or say. Self-control is my willingness not to blame certain things on triggers. Our society has gotten to this, oh, well, they triggered me. Oh, they trigger. And yes, that could be, I'm not suggesting triggers don't exist, but what happens if we come to the table already aware of our own triggers, and then we are thrust into a decision not to allow said triggers to force us into behaviors that looked like we were not exercising self-control, composure. When people lose self-control, there is a tendency to get wound up, and next thing you know, it's several things, and it's just this conglomeration of things. And before you know it, it's not one big mountain, it's several. And there's a tendency not to take responsibility because I don't have time for it, or my resources will be best used somewhere else. But when we take a moment to exercise self-control, we are putting ourselves first. We're saving ourselves a world of unnecessary issues and less regrets. I know the world is telling you, do what you want, do what thou wilt. It's your way, the highway. But what happens if we flip the narrative and now we're exercising self-control that goes into every part of our lives? We are only as strong as our weakest link. And if the link is weak, then that's the sum of the strength. We only want to focus on, what's great and what's going on, and life is wonderful, and that's good. But there is a time when you have to, as a mature, responsible individual, be willing to take accountability for our own actions. There's nobody to blame when you lose self-control. And self-control is not something that just, wow, they just lost it. There's a pattern of, over time, you're doing and saying things. You're seeing that here's the law, and I don't have to, who they talking to, I don't have to. It's like, it's a progression of I, me, my. So to spiral out of what looks like control to someone else has been a progression of these decisions and these choices. We are responsible for our own actions, our own inactions. And this leads me to a very, very big conversation regarding domestic violence. Domestic violence is very prevalent. It exists in several households across the globe. Sometimes the higher the tax bracket, the more domestic violence there is. The more changes in the family dynamics, job changes, birth, divorce, moving, et cetera, the more domestic violence. Sometimes it's just a change of the season. It's a change of the weather. It's getting ready to be the holidays. Anything can seemingly trigger domestic violence. And I want to be the voice that lets you know domestic violence is unacceptable on any level. It does not discriminate based on where you're from, where you're at, what you have, what you heard, nothing. And it may seemingly creep up out of the shadows unbeknownst to anyone. But there are signals where people have shown the extent of what they're capable of. And for whatever reason, we may have looked the other way, but it does not negate the fact that we are not here to be domestically abused. No one has the right to psychologically abuse you, physically abuse you, verbally abuse you, emotionally abuse you, financially abuse you. Abuse is abuse. And that's the misuse of that's what abuse is. It's a misuse. So as we get further and further to the new year, I want everybody to make a concerted effort to start doing more breathing exercises. Start using your brain instead of your emotions. We don't want to be typecast as emotional creatures who make emotional decisions. Most people that find themselves in situations that they never saw coming, or now they're facing the consequences of decisions that they have made because there was not an exercise of self-control. Our society has leaned lately more on looking at, oh, well, what part did you play? Why did you push them to do certain things? Why did you, if you wouldn't have done that, oh, you triggered this person. What happens if we kind of move on back to owning our part in things? Why didn't you walk away? What did you do? What could you have done differently? And unfortunately, our graves are too full with domestic violence victims. There are too many children growing up without families because of domestic violence. Corporations are filled with torn relationships because of domestic violence. Self-control. And if you've gotten to a point where you don't feel like you're no longer in control, it behooves you to have a conversation with someone. Seek help. It's not good enough to look good for the people when life behind closed doors are in shambles. Some of our establishments of faith hide these problems, and there is help. And if you are a victim of domestic violence, reach out, let's talk, let's get some clarity on where you are and what you can do. If you are in domestic violence, but you are the aggressive person, let's reach out, let's talk, let's see what resources are available, because sometimes there is a focus on the victim and no focus or rehabilitation options for those who victimize others. So self-control is going to lead the way if we let it. And it's easy to pop off and, and say, wait a minute, who you think you're talking to? Oh, but it's also a skill of composure that some of us we all have it, but some of us push it to the back and it's like, we don't need that. That ain't important. But it's something that we can use and be mindful of its importance. So in just this brief space of time, I want to thank you for tuning in to Quantum Talks 8.0 Rap Sessions with Dr. Kiki. We are still in the process of helping to coach you to the next level. You have a business plan, a concern, an issue. Let's talk about it. Let's see where you are versus where you want to go. Reach out. We can provide you the assistance that you need, okay? Thank you so much for tuning in to Rap Sessions with Dr. Kiki. Remember, self-control is all of our responsibility. Be blessed.